Hello everybody. 50 years ago, a new episode of Star Trek aired on television. It was Charlie X. For those of you who don't know, this episode is about a young 17 years old boy who somehow managed to survive alone on a planet after his ship crashed. People from the starship Antares bring him to the Enterprise, and the Enterprise is supposed to bring him to his relatives. But unfortunately, Charlie is, sorry for saying that, an asshole, and he has superpowers, so he basically tries to take over the Enterprise, and they defeat him in a very boring way. This episode is so much worse than I remembered it. The story was written by Gene Roddenberry. It was one of the stories he pitched when he was trying to sell the TV show to NBC. It was reworked into a full screen play by DC Fontana, who is usually quite good to humanize characters, but unfortunately this wasn't the case. The premise is pretty good, pretty interesting. You take a 17 years old guy, which usually teenagers are not very logical human beings. They are usually controlled by their hormones and their emotions. Now you combine it with the fact that he was never raised by other human beings, so he doesn't know how to behave in human society. Plus, give him superpowers. So I'm pretty sure Gene planned it as some interesting character study. Usually these kind of stories are done using a 3-act structure, where in the first act you meet a likable character. You will know him as a person. In second act you will find out that he maybe isn't as good as everybody thought, or maybe you can actually portray his corruption during the time. And in the third act he could either become full enemy of our main heroes, or you can have a redemption when he basically becomes a good guy again. And I'm pretty sure that they tried to do something like this. Unfortunately, they were not very successful with it. The first problem I have is that Charlie is never a likable character. He, from the first scene when we meet him, is portrayed like a weirdo and basically an asshole who doesn't know how to behave. I guess it should be charming or something like that, but it's just unpleasant to watch. I never in any scene managed to like Charlie, which means I could never feel for him. So during the whole episode I was just waiting until he gets off the ship or they kill him or something like that. Basically that something happens, and now the first maybe half of the episode is filled with stuff which could be very easily taken out of the episode and nothing would be changed. There are so many pointless scenes which lead absolutely nowhere and are only killing our time. Again, I guess that these scenes were supposed to be some kind of character growth, but they really are just wasting our time. For example, there is a scene where we watch a guy holding a long, hard, thick stick and putting it in a hole. When Charlie looks at him, he smiles at him. It's just unintentionally creepy to me. Or there is a scene in the recreation area, or what was it called on the old Enterprise, where we see Nichelle Nichols sing. Don't get me wrong, I like Nichelle Nichols and I think she has a really beautiful voice, but why does she get 2 musical numbers in a row? The first one is just basically a racist song. The second one is just making fun of their passenger, which is again not something I would expect in a Star Trek episode. And again, this whole sequence could be taken out without any consequence for the show. The editing is just bad, I'm sorry to say that, but there are so many instances where they simply left in scenes which should be removed, or there are some strange jump cuts. Like for example, Captain Kirk gives a question to Charlie an angry fashion, then suddenly we cut to a close-up of Kirk smiling happy, then we again cut to Kirk angry. This is just one example. There are really so many strange editorial choices. Or maybe right at the beginning when we first see Charlie, what the hell is he doing with his eyes and why are we seeing this in the first scene? And finally in the second half something starts to happen. We see Charlie as he's trying to take over the ship. Finally he's doing something with his superpowers. It's not heroic, but it doesn't really need to be heroic. Even supervillains are interesting if they're written correctly. But the ending is just weird. So Charlie is basically kidnapped by the aliens who raised him. So he will be safe. The whole galaxy will be safe from him. The Enterprise crew is safe. So basically it's a win-win situation where every side wins except for Charlie, who doesn't want to go with the aliens. But as I said before, I never cared about Charlie, so why should I care that he didn't get what he wanted? Because what he wanted was bad, so I'm actually glad he didn't get what he wanted. But everybody else behaves like it's something tragic. For some reason, I just don't understand their emotional reactions, because they just solved a problem and they're sad about it. I mean, Charlie is basically a terrorist, so they solved a terroristic threat without even killing anybody involved, when you don't count the first guy. So really, I think everybody should be happy. So the acting isn't very good, the pacing isn't very good, the editing is just bad, but I like the overall premise and I like something what I didn't expect. I just can't get Nichelle Nichols and her voice out of my head, so that's a strange positive thing about it. Overall, I would give this episode a 4 out of 10. Again, it's not horrible, it's not great. Some of the parts work, some of them don't. So I'm not sure if people like this episode or not, but I found out that it's much worse than I remembered it.